Saito is a wealthy loser who has a bad relationship with the annoying Karen of the class. His life takes a turn when, in order to inherit the family business, he is forced to marry her. However, after living together for a while, they realize they are starting to develop clapping feelings for each other. And just like every other day, Akane starts her day by yelling at Saito for some reason, but the latter is as unbothered as a capybara chilling on a crocodile. While the two are arguing, Akane's best friend Himari comes over and watches the two of them bicker. She thinks that Akane seems to care way too much about what Saito does, so she's starting to wonder if there's something going on between the two of them. Akane is disgusted and says she would rather eat a chocolate made out of insects than date a person like Saito. The latter is equally offended by the idea, and they start arguing even more. Once the school day is over, Saito is on his way back home. But all of a sudden, he gets a phone call from his grandpa. The old man asks Saito to come over for some tea at his house, but Saito says he has better things to do than sip tea with old farts. Grandpa reminds the young lad that Saito has already been made an heir to his company. Before Saito can say anything, a limo and some armed guards pull up beside Saito. Saito briefly considers running out of there like women in relationships running away from accountability, but he eventually gets into the limo. And while the guards are driving him, he asks where he's being taken. The guards tell him they were instructed to bring Saito to a villa, but they don't know what his grandpa is planning. Saito's grandfather, Tenryo, once saved the Hojo group from the brink of collapse, and now he is one of the most powerful people in the world. Eventually, they arrive at the house, so Saito sits outside and waits for his grandpa to show up. But while he's waiting, Akane also unexpectedly shows up, and the first thing she does is yell at him. She asks Saito what he's doing there, and he explains that his grandpa asked him to come. As it turns out, Akane's grandma invited her here for tea as well. Just then, Saito's grandpa and Akane's grandma show up, and they've got something important to tell the two kids. Over lunch, Saito impatiently asks them what they wanted to talk about since he doesn't want to be near Akane. The two respond by dropping a bombshell and announce that Saito and Akane are going to get married. The youngsters initially take it as a joke, but their grandparents are dead serious about it. Tenryo and Akane's grandma, Chiyo, have known each other since they were kids, and were even in love back then. But due to some petty arguments, they ended up drifting apart. Tenryo and Chiyo both ended up marrying other people, but they can't help but wonder what could have been had they stayed together. So they have come up with the brilliant idea to force their grandkids into marriage. Akane objects to the marriage because marriage is something that's supposed to be done out of love, not because two old people want to watch their grandkids get frisky. Tenryo had expected this response, and thus gives Saito an ultimatum. Either he marries Akane, or he writes Saito out of his will and donates all his wealth to the family pet. Wealth is something Saito does care about, so he immediately changes his tune and agrees to consider the offer. But Akane is still strictly opposed because she only wants to get married to the person she loves, and not an annoying pest like Saito. Just then, Chiyo calls Akane over, so the latter goes to her grandma's side, and the old woman whispers something into her ear. Whatever she said must have been a serious threat, because it sends shivers down Akane's spine. After the two oldies have given out their blackmails, Tenryo says he is giving the two of them 3 days to decide whether they'll get married or not. Once their grandparents are gone, Saito asks Akane what threat her grandma made so he knows how bad her situation is. Akane gets defensive and refuses to tell him, since it's a private matter. Later that night, Akane decides to call Himari to ask for advice on what she should do. She explains the situation of being forced to marry someone without exposing the name. Akane asks what Himari would do if she were in the same situation. Himari says she would have to refuse, since she already likes someone and would never marry someone else. Akane is surprised to hear that Himari, who is as bland as white bread, has a crush since she's never mentioned him before. But that's just because Akane never asked. And Himari doesn't want to tell her the guy's name yet, since she hasn't confessed to him. She does admit, though, that it's someone from their class. Meanwhile, back at his house, Saito is having a panic attack, because he already has a hard enough time dealing with Akane at school. If they end up married, he'll always have to hear constant nagging and interrupting like staying with a loud leaf blower. Saito's cousin Shisei can tell something is bothering him, so she asks what's wrong. Saito explains that their grandpa is threatening to disown him if he doesn't agree to his demands. She's perfectly fine with him giving up his rights to the company if that's what he wants, because even if he ends up becoming a hobo, she'll still love him the same. Regardless of what he chooses to do, she promises to be by his side every step of the way, and Saito is really glad to have her support. 3 days go by, and both Saito and Akane meet with their grandparents because they've decided that they're going to get married. However, the old farts add one more surprise and say they expect Saito and Akane to start their life as a married couple immediately. They've even got a brand new house lined up for them, so they drop them off there and drive off. Akane starts freaking out because she can't just suddenly start living with Saito, but Saito is already desensitized to the BS his grandpa pulls, so this doesn't surprise him. The two of them head inside, and since the house is actually pretty nice, Akane thinks living here might actually be fun. The place is fully equipped with everything they could possibly need, but there's only one bed. They call their grandparents to complain about the bed, but their creepiness knows no boundaries. as they want Saito and Akane to rush the creation of their grandchildren's. Akane nervously asks if he really intends to do something nasty with her tonight, but Saito, being a Dumbo, has no idea what she's talking about. However, Akane still doesn't trust him, so she threatens to stab him with her comically large pencil if he tries anything before running out of the bedroom. After everything is unpacked, Saito finds a meal his grandpa left for him. Tenryo may be a jerk, but Saito thinks this was actually a pretty thoughtful gesture. After warming up the pizza, Saito gives his new wife a slice. The latter takes it and immediately leaves without even saying thank you. A few minutes later, Saito and Akane head to bed and make an agreement to set boundaries between themselves. To distract himself, Saito starts a conversation and asks Akane why she agreed to the marriage, but she still doesn't want to give any details about her reasons. This marriage is just a formality, so she's just going to put up with it for the sake of her dream, even if it means following their grandparents' weird rules. Unfortunately, while they are talking, Saito accidentally touches her butt, so yet another fight ensues. The next day at school, Akane pulls Saito before entering the class and reminds him that he isn't allowed to tell anyone that they are married. Saito tells her that he already plans to keep it a secret, but Akane still doesn't trust him. Afterwards, Saito sits at his desk, only to find Shisei standing in front of him with a blank expression like a doll out of a horror movie. She steps closer, sniffs him, and notices that his shampoo smells different, so she asks where he slept last night. An embarrassed Saito awkwardly looks away and claims his dad bought a weird shampoo, so he's trying it out. But Shisei keeps remarks that it's not just the shampoo because he smells like a girl. Without another word, she leans in and gently bites his neck. Then, as if concluding a mystery, she states that he must have got married. Before Saito can respond, Shisei reveals that she noticed strange behavior from their grandfather, so she investigated and discovered their new house. As she's about to say he married Akane, Saito covers her mouth and rushes her out of the classroom. Outside, Shisei offers to stay quiet on one condition: he will be her servant from now on. Later that afternoon at home, Saito is reading when he hears Akane scream from the kitchen. He rushes in and finds her standing in front of the open fridge. She demands to know why it's filled with so many juice cans. Saito calmly explains that he bought a whole truckload of concentrated vegetable juice because it's rich in vitamins and will make them healthier. Akane can't believe the stupidity and snaps that it won't make them healthier since it lacks proper nutrition. But Saito has come prepared as he opens the second fridge to reveal another truckload of cup noodles. Akane stares in horror before screaming at the top of her lungs. Despite this, Saito, who has the awareness of a toothbrush, makes a weird shake of vegetable juice and whey protein before offering it to Akane. She looks at him with increasing alarm, asking if he plans to survive solely on cup noodles and vegetable juice. Saito nods, insisting that this is the pinnacle of cooking. After knowing that Saito is a useless bum, Akane quickly dons a cooking apron and gets to work. As she moves around the kitchen, she glances at Saito seated at the dining table with a blank, almost puppy-like expression. She thinks to herself that he'll be blown away by how good her food tastes. When she finally places the food in front of him and sits across the table, she waits eagerly for his reaction. Saito picks up his chopsticks, cautiously checks the dish for hidden traps, such as nails or explosives, and when he finds none, he takes a bite. He goes full Ratatouille mode as memories of childhood meals flood back, and a faint smile appears on his face. However, when it comes to talking to Akane, he says it's just a simple home-cooked meal. Akane is offended and declares that if it's not good enough, she'll feed it to the dogs. Saito tries to grab it back, protesting that he never said it was bad. He gets a hold of the plate and starts eating while Akane tries to stop him. Once he's done, he sets the plate on the table, claps his hands in a quick prayer, and leans back, satisfied with his full stomach. The next morning, Akane tries to wake Saito up for school, but he's fast asleep, dreaming about cuddling in bed with his cousin Shisei. While he is caught in the dream, he pulls Akane into bed, mistaking her for Shisei. After a few moments, she snaps out of it and yells at him, and the duo both head out of bed. Akane, however, scolds him for leaving the dishes unwashed since she cooked dinner the night before. Saito shows his caveman side by saying she should just use the clean utensils for now and he'll do the dishes later when they pile up. This infuriates Akane, and she yells at him to do the dishes immediately. That night, Saito is happily playing the new zombie video game that just dropped until Akane walks in complaining about the noise. She glances at the screen, immediately covers her eyes as she is disgusted by the gore and tells him to stop playing. Saito refuses, so they start tugging at the console in a heated argument. In the middle of the chaos, the doorbell rings and Akane lets go of the console, accidentally turning the game off in the process and wiping out his 12 hours of gameplay. Hours later, Saito wraps a towel around his waist and heads to the bathroom for a bath, since he can no longer stand his own horrible stench. He steps inside but freezes, as a fully bare Akane is already in the bathtub with her eyes closed and unaware of his presence. Saito walks out, but as he's about to leave the bathroom, he starts thinking it's strange that she didn't notice him at all. He wonders if she might have passed out or something. He steps back into the bathroom and assumes that this is how people end up drowning. Saito rushes in and tries to lift her out of the bath, but since he is built like a twink, she ends up falling onto him.
Oh my God!
She rests against his chest for a moment before waking up and realizing the situation. She immediately accuses him of being a creepy weirdo, while Saito tries to explain, but she doesn't listen and orders him to get out. The next day at school, Himari notices Akane seems down and asks what's wrong. They sit down and Akane explains her problem with Saito, but she keeps his identity anonymous because she doesn't want Himari to know about their marriage. Himari thinks it over and suggests giving the person a big hug, and Akane immediately rejects that idea as she would rather hug a cactus. Instead, Himari advises her to talk things out with the person, reminding her that respect is a two-way street. Meanwhile, Saito is having lunch outside with Shisei and venting about his issues with Akane. Shisei bluntly suggests that it's not that hard, as all he has to do is listen to her, be sensitive, and learn to compromise. Later that day, Saito comes home, determined to try Shisei's advice. But as he opens the door, he sees Akane standing there with an intensely angry expression. Before he can leave, Akane grabs his arm and asks if they can talk. Saito assumes she's about to bring up divorce, but to his surprise, she wants to discuss how they can make their marriage work. A few moments later, they sit across from each other and agree they'll need to set some ground rules if they're going to live together. Saito begins by saying he prefers washing his clothes and dishes only when they pile up, but Akane raises her voice slightly, saying she refuses to live like a dirty pig. Hearing that, Saito agrees to do his laundry more often, which surprises Akane since she didn't expect him to be so cooperative. Over time, things start improving between them, and one day, Saito surprises Akane with a thoughtful gift, showing he's willing to put in effort for their relationship. After dinner, Saito takes it upon himself to wash the dishes, but Akane joins him in the kitchen and offers to help with the dishes, as she washes alongside him. He starts to realize that while he's only seen her in bad moods before, she's actually really beautiful when she's not angry. One night, Saito is busy reading his favorite book when Akane interrupts him. She tells him she rented a movie that caught her attention and wants them to watch it together. Saito is baffled and considers this to be utter nonsense, wondering why anyone would want to watch a movie about kittens for 24 hours straight. Fortunately, Akane says she found the 3-hour version of the movie instead, and Saito quickly suggests they watch that version instead. They begin watching the movie, and while Akane enjoys every second of it, Saito dozes off on the couch because he is bored out of his mind. When the movie ends, Akane expresses how much she loved it and suggests they watch the full 24-hour version next time. Since they watch something Akane likes, she insists it's only fair for Saito to pick the next thing to watch. However, Saito admits he prefers games to movies, and 30 minutes later, Akane is having the time of her life, celebrating her victory after defeating a game boss. Later that night, as they lie in bed, Akane thanks him for the fun they had that day. She then tells him to stop addressing her without actually using her name, adding that she prefers when he calls her by her name. The next day at school, Himari walks up to Akane moments later and asks if she and Saito had a fight, and the latter lies that they are always fighting. However, Himari senses something is off as their behavior doesn't match their usual constant bickering. Feeling cornered, Akane rushes out of the classroom and goes home. A few hours later, during the break, Saito calls out to Akane as she walks down the hall, but the latter turns around with an annoyed look, saying she prefers not to talk much at school. Saito quickly pulls her into an empty room to avoid being overheard. Saito asks if she's busy or has plans for later in the day, and when he learns she's free, he invites her to go shopping with him after school. Akane realizes this might be a date. Saito says it's not a date and that he only needs her as a mule to carry groceries. Later, Akane and Saito walk through the park, both blushing as they approach the supermarket near their homes. Akane soon discovers the supermarket is holding a limited-time sale, and a crowd is already gathered to grab the discounted items. She tries to push her way through the chaos but quickly gets shoved to the side. Saito attempts to jump in as well, but he's tossed aside like he is a vegetable dish in a party. That night, Akane wakes up to find Saito with his finger in front of her face. She sits up and immediately scolds him, accusing him of planning to gouge a hole in her cheek. Saito denies her accusation and admits he's a total simp by explaining that he couldn't resist poking her cheek because she looks so cute while sleeping. Akane blushes at his response and hugs her pillow. She lies back down and tells him he can watch her sleep, but only for a little while, which is still very creepy. However, the next night, Akane stays up late studying for an upcoming test, but Saito, on the other hand, doesn't see the point in studying. He boasts that he never studies and just memorizes everything from class and still scores perfectly on the last test. Akane takes this as mockery, throws her pillow at him, and tells him to leave. A few minutes later, Saito knocks on her door and hands her a snack. She opens the door and is delighted to see a strawberry cake. She takes it inside, wondering why he would go out of his way to make it for her, but decides to concentrate on eating instead. The next morning at school, Akane is walking through the halls when she suddenly collapses. Luckily, Himari, who is nearby, rushes to her side and asks if she's okay. Akane reassures her that she's fine, as she is just a bit sleep-deprived from studying all night. Himari urges her not to push herself too hard and reminds her that her health is more important, but Akane is more focused on getting the top grade in class. Himari advises her again, pointing out that she'll never outscore Saito, who has the power of plot armor. Despite this, Akane remains determined to surpass him in every way. That evening, Saito brings her a late-night snack, only to find her slumped over her desk. Assuming she's fallen asleep, he moves closer but notices she isn't feeling well. He checks her temperature and is clearly burning up from a fever. As he tends to her, Akane mumbles weakly, talking about how much she needs to study if she ever wants to achieve her dream of becoming a doctor. She explains that her ultimate goal is to help people live long, healthy lives and to be someone who can step in whenever someone is in need. Her voice turns quieter as she shares how her parents can't afford to send her to medical school. She reveals that the only reason she agreed to marry Saito in the first place was because her grandmother promised to fund her education if she married him. Hearing this, Saito feels a mix of surprise and admiration, as he never knew about this deeply personal dream of hers. Akane's frustration starts to spill out, and she vents about how hard she studies every day but can never seem to surpass him even though he has the attention span of a kitten. She admits that she's always admired him even if she never said it out loud. A few minutes later, Saito checks her temperature again. This time it has climbed to 42 Zuri, so he decides it's time to call an ambulance. But Akane insists there's no need, and tells him to just go to bed. Seeing no other option, he picks her up like he is some B-grade action hero and tells her he won't just stand by while she's suffering. Saito also decides to use this precious moment to bring up the dream she mentioned earlier. At first, she assumes he's about to roast her, but instead, he tells her that he believes in her. He's confident she'll achieve her dream, because she's someone who never gives up, no matter how hard things get. A week later, Akane wakes Saito up by leaning over him with a playful smirk and a mock death threat. She quickly laughs it off, saying he should be grateful she woke him up in time for school. Saito groans, realizing she's back to her usual antics. It turns out Akane only had a bad cold that day, and a week later everything returns to normal. At school, Saito's day starts with Himari approaching him to congratulate him on his perfect test score. She flirts with him a little, but her attempts go completely over his head. Not long after, Akane walks up to him with a deadly serious look in her eyes. For a second, he braces himself for a scolding, but she reminds him that he has a wife and warns him not to get too close to other girls. As she turns and walks away, Saito can't help but smile to himself as he thinks that maybe he really does have the cutest wife in the world. Before they head into class, Akane gives Saito the lunchbox she made for him. She's upset that he forgot to bring it with him and thinks he doesn't like her cooking. But on the contrary, Saito says he loves Akane's cooking, so it really was just an accident that he forgot it. They head into class, and when lunchtime arrives, the two of them prepare to begin eating. But before Saito can take even a single bite, Shisei comes over and says she is hungry, and demands to be given his entire lunch. Everyone in class decides to butt in on the argument. And since Shisei is cute, they all take her side and tell Saito to let her have some of his food. Saito eventually caves and lets Shisei sit in his lap so she can have a little bite of his lunch. But all of a sudden Himari walks over, and the first thing she notices is that Saito and Akane's lunches look the same. She jokes that the two of them must be going out with each other, but they both deny it immediately. In fact, they were a little too quick to deny it, so all their classmates start getting suspicious that something might actually be going on between them. Saito tries to think of a good excuse for why he has the same lunch as Akane, but when he turns back to his bento box, he finds it completely clean. Since the incriminating bento is gone, all of Saito's classmates lose interest in the conversation and walk away. Later that night, Saito and Akane are in bed, but the latter seems a little on edge because she can hear something moving. She turns around thinking Saito is doing bicep curls in bed to see. But instead, she sees that there's a terrifying figure standing over the bed. She screams so loud that Saito thinks they're under attack. But when he asks Akane what's wrong, she just tells him that she saw a ghost. Saito takes a look but doesn't see anything, so he decides to go back to sleep. Akane is too scared to sleep, so she begs Saito to stay awake with her until she calms down. A few minutes later, tells him she's about to take a bath, so she wants him to come in with her. Saito can't believe what he's hearing, but Akane is dead serious about it, so he ends up sitting outside the shower while Akane takes a bath. The next day, Saito meets with Shisei on the school roof, and he's complaining a lot about how weird Akane has been acting recently. Akane keeps talking about some ghost running around their house, but he doesn't think it's true since he's never seen anything himself. Shisei, on the other hand, says there really might be a ghost, but to confirm, she needs to talk with Akane. With that said, Shisei decides to play a harmless little prank, and nearly yells that Akane is married to Saito. However, before she can finish that sentence, she gets yanked like a sack of flour by Saito and Akane. They bring her to an empty classroom, and now that there's no threat of their secret being exposed, Akane begins seething with rage because she told Saito not to tell anyone about their marriage. He says he never actually told Shisei about the marriage, and she just kind of figured it out on her own. Later, all three arrive at the house, and Shisei begins to go through all their personal belongings. Shisei decides to search Saito's room first, and he lets her do it, since he knows there's nothing embarrassing for her to find. But to his horror, he was wrong as Shisei manages to find a pair of his underwear and does something really weird with it. Next, Shisei wants to check Akane's room, but after seeing what Shisei did with Saito's underwear, Akane doesn't want to risk letting Shisei anywhere near her clothes. They nonetheless move on to the bedroom, and Akane explains that she clearly saw the ghost standing over the bed right here. Shisei finally admits that she was the ghost all along. In truth, she got keys to the house from their grandpa, so she visited Saito and Akane in the middle of the night without telling them. The reason she was sneaking around and standing over their bed all night was because she was hoping to watch Saito and Akane get hot and steamy in bed, but that never happened. After the debacle, the three of them settle their differences and have dinner together. Saito and Shisei then head to the living room to play some games together. And once again, Akane gets the feeling that these two are unusually close to each other. A couple of hours later, Saito is lying in bed when Akane comes into the bedroom. She asks where Shisei is, so Saito tells her that Shisei is still playing games in the living room. Akane is relieved since that means she can finally talk with Saito in private. The first thing Akane wants to talk about is that cat game he was playing with Shisei. Saito usually never buys cat games, so if she had known that he bought a cat-themed game for her sake, she would have asked to play with him. Saito says he didn't bring it up because he knew how much Akane wanted to study. But even so, Akane insists that she would have gladly taken a break to play with him. Also, she wishes she could have played it before Shisei did. But Saito has no idea why that would be important to her. He asks if there's a special reason behind it, but Akane just gets embarrassed and yells that for someone so smart, Saito can be really dumb at times. Yelling at Saito somehow makes Akane feel a lot better, but she still has one more complaint. She tells Saito that she thinks he pampers Shisei a little too much, but once again, Saito thinks it's perfectly normal. All of a sudden, Akane feels a hand grab her backside, and Saito feels a hand drifting dangerously close to his Godzilla. They both deny doing anything, and a few seconds later, Shisei pops out from under the covers, and it turns out she was just messing with them again. She says she's going to spend the night in their bed so she can sleep next to Saito like always. Akane tries to explain that she only sleeps with Saito because their grandparents forced her, but Shisei assumes Akane just wants to be alone with Saito and offers to sleep on the floor instead. However, Akane doesn't want Shisei to misunderstand anything, so she says they should all sleep together after all. Later that night, Shisei turns to Akane and tells her that she needs to be more direct about her feelings for Saito. Akane tries to act like she doesn't know what Shisei is talking about, but Shisei could clearly see that Akane was jealous of how much Saito was pampering her. Shisei continues, saying she's glad Saito has someone like Akane around, since she was worried he might end up alone for the rest of his life. But when Akane asks Shisei to explain what she means, Shisei just goes to sleep. A few days later, Himari meets up with Akane at a cafe, and the first thing she does once they get seated is ask Akane if she likes Saito. Akane is caught off guard, so she frantically denies any affection for Saito, but she's curious why Himari would ask such a question in the first place. Himari admits that she has a crush on Saito, but Akane doesn't understand what she could possibly see in a loser like him. Himari says she loves everything about Saito, like how handsome and prepared he always is. There was this one time that a girl on their sports team fainted from heat stroke, and while everyone else was panicking, Saito remained calm and took charge of the situation. Now that Akane thinks about it, she realizes Saito is pretty reliable in a crisis. Himari says she really admires someone who knows how to keep things together, and Saito is always nice to her, so she was hoping Akane could get Saito to like her back. Akane agrees to help her, but she doesn't know exactly how she's supposed to play wingman. Himari replies that she just wants Akane to give her some information about Saito's interests, so she can relate to him more. But come to think of it, Akane herself doesn't actually know much about Saito. Later that evening, Saito finds Akane standing behind him with a pen and notepad in her hand. He's a little freaked out, so he asks her what she's doing. But Akane just says she's observing him and doesn't explain further. Saito tries to ignore her, but Akane keeps following him around, and even when it's dinner time, she holds her camera up to his face. He asks her if there's a reason she's holding the camera so close, but Akane can't tell him about Himari's crush, so she tells him to just ignore it. At school the next morning, Akane informs Himari about Saito's favorite food, and Himari is glad to learn a side of him she didn't know before. Since she's so interested in learning more about what Saito likes to do, Akane tells her that he enjoys playing video games and reading books before bed. Himari thinks that's really interesting, but she wonders how Akane could possibly know what Saito likes to do before bed. So Akane makes up an excuse and says she overheard him talking about it earlier. That evening, while walking back from the grocery store, Akane tells Saito that she really enjoys doing things like this. It makes her feel kind of nostalgic because she used to go shopping with her mom when she was little, but Saito can't relate to that. When they get home, Akane prepares the steak for Saito, and upon tasting it, he just kind of stares at the plate for a second in shock. Akane thinks Saito must hate the steak she prepared, but he tells her it's actually so good that he wishes he could eat it every day. Akane says she'll make as much amazing food as Saito wants, but as she says this, she gets a bit too close to his face, so they both get embarrassed. The next day at school, Himari approaches Saito at his desk and asks him if there's a particular type of girl he likes. She says she heard that Saito doesn't have a particular type, but she just wants to confirm for herself. First of all, Saito asks her where she got that information, but Himari doesn't want to reveal that she got Akane to ask him. Saito says he doesn't agree with the whole categorizing people into types thing. He would never know if he wanted to go out with someone unless he got to know them first. It's answers like that make Himari love Saito so much. A lot of guys often ask her out without knowing anything about her, and when she asks what they like about her, it's almost always about her well-endowed curves. Later that day, while Saito is playing games in the living room, Akane sneaks into his room and starts snooping around for information to give Himari. Just when she finds Saito's diary, he comes in and spots her. She immediately becomes defensive, and like an inexperienced snitch, yells that she's not funneling information about him to anyone. But Saito has no idea what she's talking about. Akane asks him if he can recommend one of his favorite books, and Saito hands her a thick book about history and the art of war. The next day at school, Himari meets up with Akane and tells her she couldn't understand a single word of the book. Akane apologizes, but Himari actually prefers it this way since she has an excuse to talk to Saito. Himari then runs over to him and says there's a book she doesn't understand, so she'd like him to help explain it to her. While Himari does this, Akane watches on from the door like a typical jealous side chick. Saito tells Himari he doesn't mind explaining the book to her. After all, whenever he and Akane fight at school, Himari would always step in to mediate for them. Himari says she just doesn't like seeing people fight, and she shares that Akane once helped her out when she was being bullied. Saito is surprised that a social butterfly like Himari was bullied, but she says she wasn't good at talking to people and didn't look like a magazine cover model back then. Akane hears all this and is deeply touched, but just then, Shisei appears and asks her if she's jealous of Himari having a crush on Saito. Akane denies it, but Shisei tells her Himari has had a crush on Saito since their first year of high school. After school that day, Himari thanks Akane for all her help and suggests spending the night at her house like usual. Akane is excited at first, but then remembers that she lives with Saito. She tries to make an excuse, but Himari remembers Shisei recently visited her. Akane eventually agrees to let Himari come over and hurries home to warn Saito. They try to hide the fact that they live together, but Himari arrives before they're ready, so Saito ducks behind the counter. While chatting, Himari tells Akane she plans to ask Saito out on a date and wants to know if that's okay. She says that even if Akane claims to hate Saito, she must feel something for him deep down, but Akane insists she hates him more than anyone in the world, and Saito starts feeling down. Upon hearing this, the next day, Himari asks Saito out, and that night, Saito brings it up at dinner. Akane yells that their marriage is fake and he can date whoever he wants, but she already regrets saying it. The next morning, Saito is about to leave for the date, but Akane finally admits she doesn't want him to go. Even if it's a fake marriage, he's still her husband, so she won't let him cheat. Saito smiles and says he turned Himari down and made up the date just to see how Akane would react. Now that he knows she cares, he invites her out shopping to make up for the prank. The next day at school, Himari greets Saito like usual. Even though she was rejected, she swears she'll keep trying until he falls for her. But now that Akane has acknowledged her feelings, she's not going to sit by and let Himari steal him from her. The very next day, Himari brings him a homemade lunch at school. She heard that he really likes steak, so that's exactly what she made. Saito declines at first, since he already brought his own lunch, but Himari insists that he at least try a bite, especially after working so hard on it. The rest of the class, who clearly have no other work, joins in, pressuring him to taste it, so he eventually gives in. When he takes the first bite, Saito is surprised by how delicious it is, so he keeps eating. Akane, watching from nearby, becomes visibly annoyed by how much he's enjoying someone else's meat. Later that day, Himari approaches Saito and says she's been struggling with math lately. She asks if he can tutor her, and Saito agrees because he can't catch hints to save his life. But then she adds that they should study at her place, and her parents won't be home. Saito accuses her of trying to turn it into a date, which is exactly what she's going for. Himari proposes a compromise. All three of them can study together, as she doesn't mind a three-way. That's when Shisei appears out of nowhere, having overheard someone threaten her ranking. Since she's currently third in class, Himari invites her too. With 4 people now involved, they decide to study at Akane's house instead. Once again, Akane hides all evidence that Saito lives there. After everyone settles in, Akane notes that Himari's grades started dropping in their first year of high school. With that clue, Saito begins teaching, and before long, Himari starts solving problems on her own. A little later, Saito heads out to buy snacks. Akane follows and starts a conversation, saying she never realized his memory was so good. Saito says he avoids bringing it up because people find it creepy. He explains that everyone in the Hojo family is born with one trait maxed out. Shisei, for example, can perform massive mental calculations. Saito's memory, however, causes him to remember awkward details about people, which makes others think he's a stalker. When they return, everyone sits down to enjoy snacks. Himari thanks Saito for the tutoring and says she actually understands math better now. She is delighted and casually suggests that next time they study at his house. She moves closer, but ends up spilling tea on herself, and upon seeing this, Saito instinctively grabs a towel from the drawer. Immediately, Himari asks how he knew where the towels were, but he brushes it off by saying he guessed. Himari has become so dumb in one-sided love that she believes him, since he's a genius anyway. Shisei leads Himari to the bathroom to clean up, and while they're gone, the power suddenly goes out. Akane panics as she's terrified of the dark and clings to Saito. He says it's just a power outage and wants to check the breaker, but Akane won't let him leave. She apologizes for being stubborn, but Saito says she doesn't have to change. He understands she has a hard time expressing herself, but he knows she means well. Moments later, the lights come back on just in time for Himari and Shisei to return to the room. They see Akane clinging to Saito, but rather stupidly thinks it's sweet that they're getting along. The next night, Saito teaches Akane a memorization method that works really well. Akane thanks him, but Saito admits it's not really his method as he made it up as an experiment. It just so happens that Akane is the first person it worked this well on. He now thinks she must be naturally gifted. Saito thinks they've studied enough, but Akane wants to keep going. He asks why becoming a doctor is so important to her, but she says it's none of his business. He agrees, but since he is shameless, he says he still wants to know. Eventually, she explains that when she was little, she had a younger sister who was very sick. Their parents were always working to pay hospital bills, so Akane was left to care for her sister, who spent every day in pain until she passed away. Akane couldn't do anything to help back then, but now she wants to help people like her sister. Later that day, Saito asks Akane if she wants to go out with him on their next day off. Akane is so flustered that she burns dinner but agrees to go out. The next day, she tells her grandma about it, and the old woman is overjoyed and reveals a secret stash of clothes she's been saving just for this moment. Akane finds something she loves, but insists she's not in love with Saito. On the day of the date, Saito is stunned when he sees Akane in her dress. He takes her into town and suggests visiting a cat cafe, but Akane refuses as she has been banned for life after getting too excited the last time. Instead, Saito takes her to a karaoke room followed by a lemonade shop. She asks why he invited her out, and Saito says he wanted to cheer her up after making her remember her painful past. On the walk home, Akane spots a ring in a shop window, but she is aware that she can't afford it. As they continue walking, Akane thanks him as she really does feel better. The next day, Akane's good mood is done, and she is back to nitpicking Saito's every move. Frustrated, he recalls her excitement over a ring in a jewelry store and hatches a plan. At school, Saito asks Himari if he can visit her house. The latter is absolutely thrilled as she assumes he wants to hang out and then calls her limo. They soon arrive at Himari's mansion, and in her room, Himari starts changing in front of him. Saito protests, but instead of listening to him, she orders him to help her. Saito has less courage than a student on results day and reluctantly does as she asks. Afterward, Himari suggests playing a game called Vampires, where she climbs on him and pretends to bite his neck. Her aunt interrupts this rather sus game and invites Saito to stay for dinner, but he says he must get home. Before leaving, he asks her aunt for a part-time job at her company to earn money for a gift. She's puzzled as Saito could ask his rich grandfather for funds, but he insists on earning it himself. When she presses as to why he wants to work so desperately, he admits it's for Akane. Himari feels hurt, realizing Saito's visit was partly to secure the job, but he insists he wanted to spend time with her. Her aunt disapproves of Saito, heir to the Hojo family, working a job, especially after his sudden marriage to Akane. She hints she had hoped he would have married Himari instead. Still, she offers him a job translating software in an obscure language, believing he can master it in 3 days. Instead of quietly doing his job, Saito claims he'll do it in 1 night. That night, Saito studies furiously, and soon Akane bursts in, shocked that he's studying. He says he's learning a new language, finishing in minutes and claiming he just needs sleep to retain it. Impressed, Akane blurts she wishes she had him inside her, then immediately clarifies she meant that she wishes she had his brain. She asks why he's studying, but Saito dodges, saying it's not her business. The next day, Saito heads to work with Himari, who keeps sitting in his lap to distract him. He asks if she's upset about the gift for Akane, but she says she's just lonely since his marriage left them less time together. She asks him to stay with her until she falls asleep that night, and he agrees to the offer. Late that evening, Saito returns home, and Akane immediately demands to know where he's been. Her suspicions grow when she gets a waft of a girl's scent on him. Thankfully, by now, Saito has learned enough playboy tricks and brushes her concerns with an excuse. The next day, Akane confides in her grandmother that she is worried about Saito drifting away. The old woman suggests other girls might be interested in him. Akane then admits one girl likes him but insists they're just friends. Later, Himari, who is sobbing like a child going to school for the first time, tells Akane that Saito rejected her again. Akane comforts her but notices Himari's scent matches the one on Saito. That evening, Akane eats alone, considering her grandmother's advice. She wants Saito around but realizes she doesn't have his number. She calls the Hojo residence, but Himari's aunt answers, before calling their marriage a disgrace and hangs up. That night, Saito finishes the translation, and as Himari's aunt trusts his work, she pays him. He immediately buys the ring with the money and heads home. However, as soon as he reaches there, Akane explodes, accusing him of spending all his time with Himari. Saito explains he's not dating her, then reveals the ring which he hopes will be a peace offering for Akane. Stunned, she thanks him and runs off, but returns shortly to say she loves it. At the university, Saito pulls his wife aside, suggesting they hide it to avoid questions. She agrees and stores it in her pouch, but since she is more careless than a toddler, the ring is gone after a while. Devastated, she searches everywhere, even considering a shady job to replace it, but knows it wouldn't be the same. Himari finds Akane crying and learns she lost the ring. They then search the school all day, but with no luck. Himari suggests asking Saito, but Akane refuses to do so. Meanwhile, Saito grows suspicious when Akane's out late, and he is soon visited by Himari. She cooks up a lie and says Akane's busy but won't say why. Saito, who may be naive but not a fool, decides to spy on Akane. The next day, he trails his wife and notices she's not wearing the ring. He then soon finds her crying under a bridge like a chronic alcoholic and realizes she lost it. He says they can buy another, but Akane insists this one was special as it was proof that he cares about her. Saito understands her sentiment and recalls her opening her bag there and pulling out a handkerchief. He then rushes back to university where he checks the storm drain and finds the pouch with the ring. A relieved Akane hugs him and vows never to lose it, but as they reconnect their relationship, a new girl tied to the Hojo family arrives in Japan, determined to steal Saito away. The next morning, Saito is lounging on a school bench when an extremely pretty girl named Maho arrives at the spot. He has never spoken to her, so he asks who she is and what she wants. After racking his brain for a while, he vaguely recalls her face from some distant memory, but can't pinpoint who she actually is. Maho is crushed that Saito doesn't remember her, but nonetheless she confesses she likes him and wants him to be her boyfriend. Saito's floored because why on earth is a stranger proposing to him on their first meet? She insists she's no stranger, and even says she knows everything about his life, including Himari's rejected confession, and even his living situation with Akane. Saito demands to know how she knows all this, but Maho deflects the question and asks if he'll date her. When he refuses, she threatens to tell the school he's married to Akane, thinking she is bluffing. Saito shrugs, pretending to be a Sigma man until she starts shouting it. He covers her mouth, and she takes it one step further by trying to sneak a kiss. Shisei arrives just in time and kicks Maho away before vowing to protect Saito, but she forgets to guard herself and Maho returns, calling Shisei cute as if she is some toy, and asks Saito if she can keep her. He refuses, but Maho tries to kidnap Shisei anyway, but thankfully, right then the school bell rings and Maho runs away to pack her bag. Saito is relieved, but Shisei warns that this new girl is definitely trouble. Later, Saito heads to his classroom and sees Shisei, Akane, and Himari leaving together. He is relieved as he hopes this will give him some alone time, but he is crushed when the super annoying Maho shows up. The guys in class, jealous of yet another girl chasing him, stare fiercely at Saito, forcing him to flee with her. Once they are alone, Saito asks why Maho likes him, and she gives the most cookie-cutter answer that it was love at first sight. He's skeptical, but Maho insists he's good-looking and says she confessed her love fast because life's too short to play safe. Saito, who's never been in love, can't relate to her nonsensical yapping. Maho asks if he loves Akane, given they live together, but he says it's not about liking her as he has no choice. Maho suggests he try falling for her instead, but Saito declines the rather blunt offer. She then changes the topic and asks for a town tour since she's new. He agrees to do so, and soon enough they head to a local restaurant where Maho devours a massive cheeseburger in seconds, shocking Saito, although he is a fast food fan too. Maho spots sauce on Saito's finger, and she licks it off clean while snapping a photo in the process. An alarmed Saito demands she delete it immediately, but she refuses, and leads Saito in a brief chase. However, she is soon out of breath, and Maho deletes the photo as she has no other option. After a while, Maho notes that Saito and Akane fight more than two sibling sisters and assumes they're incompatible. He doesn't deny it, but when she asks why he doesn't break up, he says it's not an option. That evening, Saito's ready to head home, but Maho insists she wants to spend the night with him. He refuses, so she blackmails him again with the marriage secret. Poor Saito is left with no choice, so he brings her home and rings the doorbell. Akane opens the door, ready to scold Saito, but freezes when she sees Maho clinging to him. Then, in an even bigger twist of events, Saito is left stunned when it is revealed that Maho is Akane's sister. Akane is shocked and suspicious that Maho hasn't mentioned it yet. Nonetheless, Maho hugs Akane, but the energy is so weird that Akane pushes her off. Saito thought Akane's sister was dead, but Akane clarifies she meant in a better place, as in traveling the world. Now back, Maho wants to inspect their married life as if she is some marriage inspector. She immediately checks the bedroom where she sees the double bed and asks if they sleep together nightly. Akane confirms that they do but swears nothing happens there other than sleeping. Maho is relieved upon hearing this and insists on staying to ensure no funny business. Akane agrees and gladly says she can stay as long as she wants. Akane plans porridge for dinner, but Maho and Saito protest, specifically Maho, who has got childhood porridge trauma. Akane insists, but when she opens the fridge, she finds Shisei inside, nearly frozen. Saito checks on her, and Shisei jokingly asks for mouth-to-mouth. However, it is Maho who offers to do it, horrifying Shisei, who immediately hides behind Saito. Maho is more cheeky than others give her credit for, and she claims Shisei as her sister-in-law, since Saito's married to Akane. Shisei challenges her to a little sister duel, but Maho tries to get a stepbro experience on Saito, but eventually flops in her attempts. Later, Akane and Maho talk privately, where Akane asks why Maho didn't announce her return. Maho replies that she wanted to surprise her, especially by arriving with Saito. She proposes marrying Saito instead, arguing their grandparents just want a grandkid romance, and she could secure Akane's education funding. Akane says Maho can't handle Saito's ego, but Maho cites their shared love for fast food and games, which are things Akane dislikes. Akane tries to find some comeback and questions if Maho can marry a stranger, but the latter is so shameless that she says Saito's hot, and that's enough. Maho shows Akane her finger-licking photo from earlier to prove their closeness. She then leaves quickly to bug Saito while Akane remains conflicted. Meanwhile, Saito is bathing when Maho barges in and says she wants to join. He tells her to leave, but she gets in and suggests that she will marry him instead and give him freedom from Akane. Saito, who is barely resisting, says he'll think about the whole offer. Afterwards, Saito returns to the bedroom and he is absolutely exhausted. Akane asks what's wrong, and he says Maho's energy is draining. Akane's glad her sister's lively, given her sickly childhood, and adds that she wants to spoil her. Before bed, Akane asks Saito if he wants to break up, and upon hearing this, he bolts upright. He demands why, but Akane doesn't reply, leaving them in tense silence. A few days later, the group heads to an amusement park to celebrate Maho's homecoming, but like a group of babies, tension immediately brews between them. Himari senses something off and corners Maho about her relationship with Saito. Maho admits she's trying to win his heart, declaring herself Himari's rival. Himari, fiercely protective, refuses to let anyone steal Saito, and the two bicker loudly. Meanwhile, Saito is unfazed as he ignores them and heads for the first ride. The day unfolds with fun attractions, but the roller coaster proves too much for Akane. She is such a cowardly little baby that she passes out from fear and only wakes when it's over. Trying to play it cool, she insists thrill rides don't bother her, but when they get on the Ferris wheel, she once again starts to tremble. Saito notices and asks if she's okay, and eventually, Akane admits she's terrified of heights and rides. When Saito asks why she came, Akane explains it's for Maho, who missed out on parks and festivals growing up due to her health. Akane wants Maho to make up for lost time, even if it means facing her own fears. Touched, Saito offers to hold her hand to calm her down, but Akane hesitates, wondering if he's flirting, but she accepts it anyway. To her surprise, her shaking stops, and she holds on a bit longer. That night, Saito prepares for bed, expecting Akane, but finds Maho lying next to him. She climbs on top of him, creating an awkward moment which Saito tries to defuse by asking if she remembers a party at his grandfather's years ago, when he talked all night with a girl who looked like her. Maho confirms it was her and smiles, happy he remembers. But then she starts unbuttoning his shirt, forcing Saito to stop her, saying they barely know each other. Maho claims she loves him, but Saito calls her out as he can tell she actually hates him. At that moment, Akane walks in, sees them in such a compromising position, and explodes. The next morning, Saito wakes to find Maho gasping for air while her skin is cold as ice. She admits she forgot her medication after Akane's outburst and thought she'd be fine for one night. Once they reach the hospital, her condition proves serious, and she's quickly admitted. The hospital contacts her parents, and Saito prepares to leave to avoid them. Before he goes, Maho pleads with him not to tell Akane, explaining that Akane sacrificed so much to care for her as a kid. She doesn't want to burden her again. The next day after school, Saito visits Maho in the hospital, sneaking her a burger. She's grateful but weak, and he asks why she travels despite her health. Maho confesses that she's scared and her condition could worsen or kill her anytime. She wants to live fully while she can and keeps her struggles from Akane to spare her worry. Saito realizes Maho's been distancing herself to protect Akane. He'd thought Maho hated him for stealing Akane, but her actions were driven by love. Maho explains she heard Akane married someone she hated and assumed she was miserable. She tried to marry Saito herself to free Akane, but now regrets it since Akane hates her. Saito reassures her that Akane still cares and urges her to focus on recovery so she can apologize properly. As Maho sleeps, Saito steps outside, only to find Akane there, and it is obvious that she has overheard everything. She runs off from the spot as she is unable to face him. A week later, Maho recovers and meets Akane to apologize for everything she did in the past. She admits she tried to seduce Saito to save Akane from an unhappy marriage, but Saito resisted. Maho insists Akane shouldn't blame him, and the latter agrees to move past it but asks Maho to stop pursuing Saito as she does not want her to suffer. Playfully, Maho says she might actually love Saito now and would take him if Akane doesn't want him. Annoyed, Akane yells at Saito for seducing her sister and storms into class. In class, Akane asks Saito if he meant it when he said he wanted her to be happy. Flustered, he admits he did, and so Akane invites him home, noting their grandparents would worry if they knew he'd been gone a week. Saito agrees to do so, but both of them are unaware that Himari overheard everything. Now, there is no hiding, as she knows Saito and Akane live together. In a flashback, Saito sits alone in the park, looking a bit down. When Himari walks up with her usual kindness, she says hi and asks why he's not going home. Saito shrugs, saying his annoying parents are at home, which is why it's better if he stays away. Himari gets it as she feels the same way about her own situation, and she offers to hang out with him so he's not alone. Back in the present, things get messy as Himari is shocked to hear Akane is living with Saito. The news makes it to the ears of everyone and their classmates, always ready for drama, ask if it's true. Akane rolls her eyes, saying there's no way she'd live with Saito, as it would be a disaster. Gossip spreads fast as kids remember seeing them together at the shopping district, wondering if it was a date. Saito tries to shut it down, saying he'd never like someone as wild as Akane. She snaps back, asking who he's calling wild, but before she can spill more about their home, Saito stops her and takes off. After school, Akane is still mad, blaming Saito for the rumors about them. He points out she's the one who mentioned him coming home in front of everyone. An annoyed Akane tells him not to come back, and Saito sighs, saying that makes no sense. As he leaves, students snap photos of the two together, making Saito feel like he is some Insta influencer. Later, as he and Shisei are walking home, they notice someone following them. Shisei remains super calm and says there are 3 people tailing them without even looking. When she jokes about calling a sniper, Saito gets freaked out and says they shouldn't do so. He adds that it's just classmates trying to find out where he lives, so Shisei suggests he crash at her place with food and a nap. Saito doesn't accept it, since their grandfather is getting suspicious. Shisei's next idea is to lose the followers, and she, very conveniently, says Saito should carry her and run to the bus. With no better choice, he picks her up, sprints, and they hop on the bus, leaving the followers behind. After a long ride, Saito realizes they have come to the last stop. The next bus isn't until tomorrow, and when he asks Shisei to call for a ride, she says there's no signal. Frustrated, Saito says they will have to walk, but Shisei flops down, acting like she's been shot. Saito, unfazed, says he'll leave her if she doesn't get up from her backside. Just then, a car pulls up, and Shisei's maid gets out, saying she tracked the youngster. Saito's annoyed but not surprised, and his irritation grows even more when the car zooms off without him. At home, Akane freaks out because they're almost out of rice and can't shop without running into classmates. She worries they'll starve, but Shisei channels her inner Marie Antoinette and suggests eating cake. Suddenly, a noise upstairs spooks them and Akane grabs a bat and gets ready to swing. But Saito, who wants to prove he is a macho dude, starts to fight over the bat with Akane. Soon enough, they trip and Saito lands on top of her. Right then, Maho shows up and teasingly starts taking pictures of them. Akane is so embarrassed that she pushes Saito off and tells her sister that things aren't as it looks. Saito asks when Maho got there and says he didn't hear the doorbell. However, Maho shrugs and says it's her house too. Maho says Himari is there too, but the latter steps in with a smile, hoping they're okay with her visit. While having tea, Himari apologizes to Akane and says she feels bad about the rumors. Akane is surprised and says it's not her fault before admitting they shouldn't have hidden their living situation or at least have hidden it properly. Himari then gets curious, so she asks more, but Akane dodges all her questions. Himari also says she is not mad, as she had guessed they lived together because of matching lunches, the same shampoo smell, and how Saito knew the house so well. She thought it was an arranged marriage for business, which is why they kept it quiet. But Himari adds that it's a marriage without love, and both Akane as well as Saito agree. Himari's eyes light up as she thinks she still has a shot with Saito. Suddenly getting energized, Maho calls for a plan to stop the rumors. She says that the married couple have to show everyone that they aren't actually dating. The next day, Saito and Shisei walk into class holding hands, but it doesn't work as they're already so close that no one cares. Shisei rather creepily suggests kissing him, but the latter obviously says no. Maho then makes the same offer, but Saito shuts that down too. Akane points out Himari's the only one left, and the latter agrees and says she is more than ready to pretend to be Saito's girlfriend. That night, Akane tells Saito not to get too into it, blushing as she says hugging or kissing is okay if he makes up for it later. The next day, Himari, all smiles, asks Saito to eat lunch together. He's surprised since she usually eats with Akane, but she says she wants to be with him today. Later, in a quiet spot, she says sneaking around feels odd. When Saito asks what couples do, she's unsure but suddenly says she likes him. Saito, caught off guard, laughs it off, but Himari asks for a cuddle. She sits on his lap, and though he's nervous with people watching, she tells him to hug tighter to sell it. Later, girls ask Himari if she's dating Saito. She teases they should tell the truth, then says they're a couple, saying she was jealous of Akane. The class buys it, and the rumors now focus on Saito and Himari. Walking home, Saito complains about his legs, but Himari jokes she's his girlfriend now. Akane, not thrilled, asks Himari if she's going too far, but Himari says their act is working. That evening, Saito feels bad their date was fake and promises to make it up to Himari. He spots Akane at a game center, angrily hitting an arcade machine, and pulls Himari away. Over ice cream, he says he had fun but feels guilty. Himari invites him for tea at her place. Inside, he sees a photo of himself, which she says is from a school trip. She jokes about putting up more, but he says no way. Her tea's amazing, and she says it's a rare kind. She shows him their class chat, buzzing about them. Saito's impressed, asking if she's into psychology. Himari says that she was bullied as a kid, and even with Akane's help, learned how to make people like her to feel safe. Saito respects her strength, and Himari asks if he likes Akane. He says he doesn't, and upon hearing this, Himari exclaims that she still has a chance. She'd even be okay as the other girl if she can be with him. Saito says she's worth more, but Himari, sure of herself, says she's happy with him, no matter what. A few days later, Saito realizes he and Akane still haven't swapped phone numbers. He then casually asks for hers, saying it'd be easier to text since they live together. Akane mistakes that he is trying to flirt like the Hongdae guy, but Saito quickly explains he's just being practical. As they exchange contacts, Akane wonders why they waited so long. Saito admits he held back, worried he'd seem weird, and Akane teases that it was a bit weird but then shyly confesses he's the first boy in her phone. Akane decides to save Saito's number under a fake name to avoid school gossip. When he jokingly suggests greatest genius ever, or almighty king, she mocks him by saving it as almighty time-traveling super handsome genius. Saito gets embarrassed, regretting even suggesting it, but Akane laughs as she is surprised that he can feel shame. She sends her first text, eyes shining with excitement, while Saito feels uneasy about her enthusiasm. After a few messages, Akane runs to her room and calls him. When he answers, she quietly asks if he can hear her. Saito is extremely confused by this weird behavior, and reminds her that they're in the same house. The scene shifts to Saito and Shisei hanging out when Maho bursts in and immediately tries to pounce on him. However, they manage to dodge her easily, which amuses Maho, who says Saito's getting better. She then hugs him tightly, saying she's just feeling extra friendly today. Saito then asks Maho about a girl he met at a party, and the latter teases that he might have a crush on her. Shisei asks what Saito even wants with the info for, but he says he's not chasing the girl, but he just hates not knowing who she was. Saito thinks back to the party, where only Grandpa's close circle was invited. It could have been Maho, his cousin, or even Akane, but the girl had a warm, kind smile, nothing like Akane's usual cold vibe. Maho, seeing he's serious, asks if he'd really do anything to get the girl's contact, and he says he would. She tells him to hug her tightly, and Saito immediately agrees, noting she hugs him all the time anyway, but when he tries to do so, Maho gets shy. Later, Saito ignores a call from Grandpa, only to see his face face pop up on the TV, yelling at him to pick up. Grandpa says Saito's cousin's 70th birthday is coming, and as the Hojo heir, Saito must attend and mingle. Saito reluctantly agrees and promises that he will bring a gift for his cousin. He later shares the news with Akane, who flat out says she will not go to the party with him. The next day, Saito checks if Akane's sure about staying, and she brushes him off by pretending to be busy. However, when he leaves with Shisei, her mom, and their maid, she feels oddly alone. Later, when Saito and the others get to the estate where the party is being held, Grandpa calls Saito and Shisei to sit by him. Shortly afterwards, Grandpa asks about Akane, and Saito says she stayed home as she was too shy to come. However, Grandpa pushes and asks if they're getting along, and when he'll get great-grandkids. Later, the birthday cousin explains that Akane's family has political power, making the marriage useful, and tells Saito to keep Akane happy. Back home, Himari shows up and hugs Akane as she is worried the latter might be mad about Saito. Akane says she's not, and confirms they're still best friends. The two then bake cupcakes with strawberries and tea. After a while, Himari wants to send Saito a photo, and Akane gets shocked when she realizes that they have each other's numbers. Himari says they swapped a while ago, which makes Akane briefly think Saito's cheating, then remembers they're not a couple. Himari offers to delete his number, but Akane says don't bother, sarcastically hoping he keeps texting. After Himari leaves, Akane tries studying to beat Saito in exams, but feels empty. She cannot tolerate anymore and ends up calling Saito, who is currently being harassed by every female in the party. Akane says she feels weird without their fights, and to surprise Saito asks if it's not easier without him. She admits it is, but something's off, and tells him to come home soon. That night, Akane gets spooked by a noise, so she grabs a frying pan for self-defense. A hand reaches through the window and she swings it hard, only to hit Saito. He asks her to chill, and she yells why he didn't use the door like a normal person. He says the chain lock was on and she missed the intercom. Saito says he walked 2 hours, feeling the same emptiness she mentioned. He then takes a shower while she picks up his dirty clothes, wondering how far he walked. When he is done, he catches a glimpse of Akane peeking at him, but she denies and instead claims she was dancing. Later, Akane asks about the party, but Saito is fast asleep. She calls him an idiot and welcomes him home, but unbeknownst to him, Saito, who is half awake, hears her soft voice. This reminds him of the party girl, and leaves him wondering if it was Akane. The next morning, Saito wakes up and sees Akane staring at him like she has been possessed by the soul of some creepy old man. She seems to be in a good mood and has even baked cookies for both of them. However, right at that moment, Saito starts receiving flirty messages from Himari, which instantly ruins Akane's mood. It eventually dawns on Saito that Akane might be jealous, so he does a masterclass on manipulation. He completely changes the topic and asks her why she once said, back when they first met in high school, that it had been a long time since they last met. Akane doesn't fall for it and storms out of the room. In a flashback of a party hosted by Saito's grandfather, Akane is wandering around completely bored. She steps out onto the balcony, where she unexpectedly meets Saito, who's in a similar mood. They start talking and enjoy each other's company, sharing a special moment. The flashback then jumps to their high school entrance exam, where Akane meets Saito again, but he doesn't recognize her. Back in the present, Akane is tormented that she's the only one who remembers their past. Elsewhere, Himari is sitting alone when 3 guys start harassing her despite her protests. Saito dramatically intervenes, threatening the guys and even falsely claiming to be Himari's boyfriend. The guys flee, and Himari teases Saito that she will deduct $50 for overacting. Nonetheless, she reminds him of a favor he owes her and suddenly kisses him. The next day at school, Akane's classmates show her a photo of Saito and Himari kissing. She leaves only to run into Himari, who taunts her, saying she genuinely wants Saito. A furious Akane walks away without responding. Later at home, Akane is determined to do something and calls Himari to talk. After a few hours at the park, Akane bluntly tells Himari to break up with Saito, but Himari points out they aren't even dating. Akane clarifies she means they should stop their act, accusing Himari of taking things too far, like going on dates and kissing Saito. Himari questions why Akane cares since she's only formally married to Saito and has always said she hates him. Finally, Akane confesses she likes Saito, but Himari refuses to back down too. Akane counters that she's liked him since they met at age 12, shocking Himari, who was unaware of their history. Their argument escalates into a typical girl fight, but their moods suddenly shift and they start talking about friendship. Himari admits she knew Akane liked Saito and was pretending to pursue him to bring them closer together. Akane and Himari get emotional, vowing not to give up on their feelings for Saito while promising to remain friends. The next day at school, Akane struggles to get close to Saito because her feelings for him are so intense now. Comment down below, Ultra Nerd, if you watched till the end. Subscribe so you don't miss the next video.